What's up, my fellow Kino Lords? So, I'm going to be doing a quick roundup of short reviews for 3 to 4 films that I watched trying to prepare for the 2022 list. Starting with Avatar 2, The Way of the Water. So, I'm going to come right out of the gate and say that I rewatched the first Avatar recently, and I haven't rewatched it since I was 15. When I was 15, I thought that movie was pretty rad. After rewatching it, I honestly thought the first one is pretty terrible because, beyond the obvious innovative effects and some decent action sequences, the story is just unforgivably unoriginal. And it's basically just a rehash of Pocahontas and Dances with Wolves and everything about the writing, which is very on the nose, lazy, expositional, very spoon fed, and it made the story and what's going to happen with the characters very predictable. And overall, I just found the first one to be a very annoying and at times agonizing experience this time around. I really did not like the first one. So that being said, coming out of the sequel, Avatar 2, I can say that it's a step up from the first one for sure. I did find some enjoyment in the movie, a lot more enjoyment than the first one. I do think it runs into a lot of the same problems that the first one has in terms of, again, dialogue that is very unnecessary. It just explains so much for no particular reason. It kind of treats the audience as if we're all dumbasses. And again, like even beyond that, some other similar issues is that it's also a bit predictable here and there. It's not the most original. It also kind of rehashes a big plot point that the first one has, because in the first movie, it's about a white man having an avatar and having to learn the ways of the forest and learning the culture of the native people. And in this one, it's the native forest people having to learn the ways of the water of the native water people. So there's a huge sequence that reminds me so much of the main plot line of the first one. So in that way, it's not really fresh. It's essentially a rehash, but overall, even though the story wasn't the most original and it is a bit predictable here and there, it runs into so many cliches, and the direction of the acting at times is kind of suspect and just very flat and cheesy. I think the spectacle element and the effects and the action sequences, especially in the third act, are a huge step up in my opinion. Like the third act action grandiose sequence that is really long. It felt like a whole 30 to 40 minutes long. I thought was really effective because you have a lot of different characters this time around that kind of have their own conflicts, internal and external. And even within the action sequences, they're dealing with their own conflicts and they're dealing with their own struggles. And the way that the film is able to focus on all these characters and organize all the events in a way that at the end of the day brings them all together in the third act, I think is quite impressive. And again, the visuals are obviously out of this world great. I'm not sure if, in 15 to 20 years, some of this will be dated, because I feel like some of the effects in the first one are a tad bit dated, even though overall it obviously does hold up pretty well. I still think the spectacle element is definitely worth your time in that regard. And even though, again, I'm not really a huge fan of the execution of the writing or the direction of the acting and the overall originality of the story, I think that it is a step above the first one, and there is a bit more complexity to it, and it isn't just a shameless rehash of something that we've already seen a billion times before. I mean, again, it's not the most original thing ever, but at least I feel like it tries to do something a bit different, and the narrative and the characters are a little bit more complex here and there, and there are some more emotional resonance, even though this film does try to tug at the heartstrings in many different moments, and it doesn't really work for me on a lot of those moments. I can't say that I didn't feel anything during some of those attempts, so I think it's effective there, because in the first one I didn't pretty much feel anything. But yeah, overall, I think in terms of the action, the effects, and even the plot and narrative and everything, it is a step above. I mean, the effects and action definitely a huge step above. The plot, the narrative, and the dialogue still runs into a lot of the same issues, but Overall, I do think it's a step above. And for that reason, you know what? I was really struggling with a rating for this one, but I think I'm probably just going to go with a very, very generous soft 6 out of 10. But that's all I got to say about Avatar 2, El Camino de la Agua. Thank you very much, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this review.